to celebrate International Workers' Day and to express our solidarity with millions around the world. And we commemorate, among other struggles, the demand for the 8-hour workday and the Chicago Haymarket martyrs who were executed in 1886 for their role in that struggle. Their slogan is one that resonates for us still today. It was 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will. Wouldn't that be great? And today we recommit to our fight against oppression and to greed, exploitation, racism, Islamophobia, war, and so much more. We know a better world is possible, and the fact that you are here today means that you also know a better world is possible when we work together. We all play a role in bringing about that change. Many of the improvements that we are seeking in British Columbia will require a change of government, and we together can make that happen on May 9th. If you haven't voted already, I sure hope you will do so. And in many parts of the world, the struggle is much more difficult as workers are denied the most basic rights, rights such as the right to form a union or to have collective bargaining. Many of you, I know, have first-hand experience with those kinds of conditions. So our solidarity crosses all borders as we work for women's rights, migrants' rights, minority rights, the environment, a fair economy, social and economic justice, and peace. And our speakers will reflect those kinds of objectives. So I'd like to invite our first speaker, Lillian Howard, who will begin us with a welcome. Lillian is from the Nuu ancestry, and she's opened our May Day ceremony for several years now, and she also serves on the Urban Aboriginal Advisory Committee for the city. Lillian Howard.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's always a wonderful sight to see you here gather around on May Day, which is a very important day for workers around the world. Uklashis, Lillian, Histakshits Moachat, Siyasij, Nutalatat, Kokwayakwak, and Tlinkit, Tlako, Amasis, Musqueam, Slawitu, Squamish, for allowing us to work and play in our land. And today, as we reflect on what May Day is all about, remember in your heart to keep the prayers of the ancestors of this land, the people of Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish, in your hearts and in your prayers for all the challenges that they and other Indigenous peoples from around the province face with respect to injustices when it comes to racism and when it comes to environment, when it comes to social issues. So these are really huge issues that Indigenous peoples that we face on a daily basis. Right now we're working on the issue of violence against women, the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, the oil tankers on the coast, you name it. We have presence, we're representing in every aspect of Canadian life. And what I would like to do is to read from my notes, which I usually don't do, but today I am. Happy May Day, everyone.
Thank you.
May your days ahead be filled with good days and many blessings for you and your families. With the upcoming provincial election, it is more important than ever for us and our families to be a part of change, and we definitely change and we need change in this province.
Oh yeah.
For too long, under this government, there has been way too far marginalization of Indigenous people, of various people who are oppressed around the province, whether it be in the city or the rural areas. Absolutely no respect for people of British Columbia from this current government. The people of BC have had too many setbacks from the current government. Take the time to vote and to help make a difference.
Woo!
With the rise of unemployment, there is an increase in poverty within our city. There is a high number of homelessness, people needing shelter, from the cold, and we've had an extraordinarily long winter this year, so it's been really hard on families and on the city and other organizations who provide that support to homeless people in the city. And the substance abuse, all we have to do is to look at what's happening with the fentanyl crisis, the opiate crisis, which is affecting not only people in the downtown east side, but families all across the country. That's not being addressed by the provincial government.
Our next speaker is someone I think is known to all of you, Irene Lanzinger, who is the president of the BC Federation of Labour. She's a powerful voice for workers, whether or not they have a union card in their pocket. And she has been working tirelessly for months in support of the candidates for the NDP around the province, working to be part of that change. Irene Lanzinger.
Thank you so much, Joey. It's so great to be here, and happy May Day, everyone. Happy Workers of the World Unite, I like to say. It's a day to celebrate our successes, our fight for better wages and benefits, for workers' rights, and we've been involved in that fight for a long time, hundreds of years, I would argue. And it's a time to remember that our greatest strength is in our numbers and in our solidarity. I want to talk a little bit about one of the successes that we've had in the last year that means a lot to me, because I came home about a month ago and I got this in the mail from my local of the BC Teachers Federation. It's the restored Vancouver Teachers Federation Vancouver School Board collective agreement language. And this meant a lot to me because I spent a lot of time filing grievances around this language in the 90s when I was president of the Vancouver Secondary Teachers Association. And the sad fact is that I was one of the chief negotiators for the provincial bargaining when this language is stripped out of our collective agreement. And I was lucky enough to be in the Supreme Court on May 10th when the language was returned to teachers. It's a great victory for teachers, but it's a great victory for workers and for the labor movement, because it's a victory that says you have the right to bargain. You have the right to stand up for your working conditions in this country. And governments do not have the right to strip those things away with legislation. So it was a great victory for all workers in this country. But like all of our successes in the labor movement, we don't do it alone. The fact is we succeed or fail together. And teachers didn't do it alone either. The health services case that went before was important. The support of CUPE was important. The support of all the other unions in this province was important. The support of parents, civil society groups, progressive groups who supported teachers in that struggle for 15, 16 years. That really got us that victory. And so it's a wonderful victory because it will fund public education next year and kids will have the support they need, or more support anyway. And it's a sad fact that there were 15 years when kids went without that support because we have a government that doesn't respect workers, that doesn't respect bargaining rights, and that doesn't respect the law, as it turns out. We can never forget that it was the Christy Clark that waged that war on teachers, on healthcare workers, and on public services. And indeed, they are a government that doesn't respect unions and doesn't respect workers. I was in the budget lockup in February, and this issue of welfare rates came up. We have not raised social assistance rates in this province for 10 years. And Christy Clark and Mike de Jong were both asked about that. And you know what they said? They said, we're going to get those people jobs. And there is so much wrong with that statement. First of all, it misunderstands the complex issues faced by people who live in poverty. Completely misunderstands those issues. But the second thing wrong with that statement is that a job does not lift you out of poverty in this province. Because there are 500,000 workers who work for less than $15 an hour, and even if they work full-time, they live in poverty. And that's why we have a campaign to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. You know, elections are about opportunities, and so we have an opportunity on May 9th. We have an opportunity to elect the government that does respect workers, that does respect unions. and that will help lift workers out of poverty by introducing a $15 minimum wage. We have an opportunity to elect a government that shares our values, one that will put in place a poverty reduction plan so that 1 in 5 children in this province doesn't grow up in poverty, which is currently the case. A government that will put in place a $10 a day childcare plan so that families can support their children and work, and they aren't paying $1,200, $1,600 a month for childcare, which is really an issue for all working parents, but particularly an issue for women, and keeps them out of the labor force in many cases. We have an opportunity to elect a government that will bring in social housing so that we can reduce the cost of housing in this province, that will help renters. These are all things that we can do together. It is possible to look after each other and to build a province where we look after the most vulnerable and where we lift people up rather than push them down, as this current government has done. Today's a day to remember the history of working people, and that's a history of fighting for a better life for workers. Better wages, better benefits, an end to racism and sexism and homophobia and ableism, an end to war, and focusing on peace. These are all things that we have fought for together as workers. And we have a secret weapon, and it is an incredibly powerful secret weapon, and that is our numbers and our solidarity with each other. The fact is that as workers, there is always more of us than there is of them. There are more workers than there are CEOs of corporations with obscene salaries. There are more workers than there are right-wing politicians who hate unions. And if we use that strength, we can do very, very powerful things. So today, let's celebrate our solidarity and commit to working together to have that better, just world that we all want. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is our last speaker before a little bit of music to end the day, and that's Byron Cruz, who is a healthcare worker and a migrant advocate. He's a representative of the organization called Sanctuary Cities, which is doing very valuable work to make sure that the most vulnerable people in our communities, often who are undocumented workers, have full access to medical care and education for their children without fear of apprehension and potential deportation. Byron Cruz, where are you? Here you go.
Thank you for the opportunity to be with you. Thank you to the unions. Thank you to the heroes and martyrs from Chicago who gave their lives for us to commemorate one more year. Long life to the International Day of the Workers! Long life to socialism! Long life to the revolutionaries! Long life to the workers! Thank you. Thank you to our brothers and sisters of the First Nations to allow me to be here, to allow me to speak up, to allow me to be a refugee in these lands. This is an important day in different plazas around the world. Today, millions of Cubans march in defense of the revolution, in defense of the socialism. Millions of Cubans march with their hearts, with thousands of Fidels, thousands of Che Guevaras, thousands of Camilo Cienfuegos. They all march today in defense of the revolution. Today, thousands of Venezuelans march in defense of the Bolivarian revolution. We know that the United States and the right wing is trying to bring down the Bolivarian revolution, but Chávez vive y la lucha sigue. Chávez vive y la lucha. Chávez vive y la lucha. No, thank you. This time, Thank you very much. A few years ago, Sanctuary Health was formed in 2012 to fight back against the conservative immigration laws in 2012. The conservative government is gone. We are still here fighting for sanctuary cities, and we will be keeping fighting for sanctuary cities. The conservative government is gone. Other governments are coming, and we will be there. We will be there fighting against the unjust immigration laws. It's not just the federal government, but in the last 15 years, we had many of the provincial institutions that became checkpoints for the immigration, checkpoints for Canada Border Service Agency. Are we are going to allow that to continue? No, we don't want these institutions to continue being immigration checkpoints. We will fight against that. Change starts with us. Change starts to bring down Christy Clark. Change starts back with bringing back people from the left to the power. It's time for us. It's May the 9th. It's time for us for this change. It's the beginning of the change. It's the beginning for us also to dismantle these institutions that became immigration checkpoints. We will be fight against that. Many institutions became immigration checkpoints, hospitals, transit police, a school. Then we have been fighting to open those doors. We have many victories in the last 2 years, and we will have more victories in the future years. Thank you. Many of us celebrating here that we have employment standards. Many of us celebrating here that we have rights. Many of these rights are not part of the life of the migrant workers in the farms. They come, they work hard. Thanks to them, we have the fresh vegetables in our tables. Thanks to them, we enjoy the nutritious food. But thousands of them, almost 10,000 in British Columbia, don't have the same standards. The provincial government just said that this is not their program, that this is a federal program. But we want a provincial program, a provincial government that work with us, that work with the migrant workers to bring them the rights that they have to have. There is no right for organization, only 1 or 2 unions in the farms. People working 15, 16 hours a day, not overtime payment. It's time to unionize workers, to be in solidarity with non-unionized migrant workers. Thousands of people working in the construction, thousands of people working in the cleaning industry. My friends from the undocumented communities, here is the voice. Here is the voice that we will fight. We will keep organizing our collectives and work together with the workers. Long time we will be there. Long life to socialism. Long life to the revolution. Long life to the workers.